We're here, and I thank you. Welcome to Writers Lunch today, y'all, for our discussion of building writing communities. We're proud to welcome in alphabetical order Charlie J. Askew, Mark Haber, and Miranda Ramirez, even though Miranda isn't her real name. I love pseudonyms. Absolutely.
Oh, likewise.
Charlie Askew is the author of Tales of the Astonishing Black Spark, finalist for the Forward Indies Award, as well as a Judge Dredd book that I do not have the name of at the moment, and a member of the writing community in Columbus, Ohio. I was glad to meet Charlie and get a copy of his book, which I enjoyed very much at the AWP 2020 conference, also known as the last conference ever.
Right.
Mark Haber is the author of Reinhardt's Garden, nominated for a Penn Hemingway Award, as well as a bookseller at Brazos Bookstore, which is reopening to browsing. Seriously, one of my favorite pastimes, and it's by appointment only. It's like your own private bookstore. Yep. And I just found this out, Mark, that you were represented by Danielle Bukowski, who I was lucky enough to meet at the Write Space Write Fest conference last year.
Oh, wow.
And she represents Brian Washington as well, who's having a new book coming out, which is awesome.
Yes. Yeah, she's great. Yep.
Got that on pre-order at Brazos, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you, Miranda.
Miranda Ramirez, hanging out in on a tiny school, is a founding editor of Defunct Magazine, a teacher at Writers in the Schools or Virtual Schools, and a tireless organizer in the Houston community. The first printed edition of Defunct Magazine will be released this month. She's also leading a series of badass 4 p.m. Check Defunct's Facebook page for more information. And we're so happy. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Absolutely.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
So I want you guys to be able to lead this for sure. I don't want to get in your way, but I just in directing a couple of things, I'll push it in Washington Week. Kind of style. I'll just bounce from one to the next. Absolutely. But Miranda, can I ask you? In your poetry, in your prose, what role do friends and family play in your writing process, and especially the ones who don't read your work?
Okay. Well, family is a major subject in a majority of my work, even in my fiction. It is my poetry as well, but a lot of my work draws from actual experiences and trauma with family. So they play a major role, I would say, in subject matter. It's funny that you say family that doesn't read my work, because I've pretty much had a lengthy conversation with my father about how my work is over his head, and he's tried, but he's just not gonna read that. It puts him to sleep at night. So I'm like, my life's work. Cool. Thanks, Dad. And my mom is pretty much just so busy competing with my best friends about who knows my work best that I don't think she gets it very much either. So beyond subject matter, family doesn't play that much more of a role. Friends, on the other hand, that don't read my work don't really exist for me. Really, at this point, the people that I keep in my inner circle of friends, they all get forced to read my shit. So
yeah, absolutely. If I can pass that on to Mark, do you have the same experience?
I think similar.
I think draw from your family.
I don't. I think my fiction is very. It's not that it's fantastical, but it's very much of a different place, whether it's Europe or Latin America, and like with Reinhardt's Garden, a lot of it's a different time period. It's different countries. I definitely have a group of friends, close friends that are like my first readers. But I don't feel like I draw from my own life for my fiction. I never have. I look at writers who can do that, and it's not that I envy them, but I just don't have that in my DNA. It really is more that my imagination kind of finds things that aren't of my daily life that I end up writing. There are things I care about, but they're not anything from like my family or daily life.
do you get support, do you think, from friends and family, like, as Miranda said, like, not professionals,
Right.
do you get support from them? I'm not going to ask if you get critique from them, for sure.
Right. I do get support, but more so since I've started to have a little success. My father I knew when I was 17, I wanted to be a writer. And so my parents were, very pragmatically said, well, that's great, but what are you going to do? And now in the last year and a half, since I've started to have a little more success, they're a lot more supportive now. So they never discouraged me, but they never were like, because I grew up in a house with books, but my relationship with reading has always been a lot stronger than anyone else's. My parents were readers, but not I think to the extent that I am. So I definitely had the support of my family, but they always wanted me to have a backup plan. And this was always my only plan. All the other stuff I do is just kind of the ephemera. It's the stuff I have to do to pay bills so I have a light on so I can write.
Oh yeah, no, that's a great answer, absolutely. And
Yeah.
the backup plan is always the parent thing,
Yeah.
Like Charlie, what would you say the pushback or the support or non-support, I guess, of friends and family is for you?
Well, I feel like, I definitely have different, like everybody does, social groups that you kind of navigate. So you have like your group of, for me, like super dorks, and then you have like your readers, and then you have just like your like family friends, or but generally it's kind of a hodgepodge mix of like who like reads and engages with my work. Like I'm always surprised and just like thrilled when like a friend reaches out and says, hey man, I read your book, and like I'm like, what, you read it? Awesome. Like, like not that I didn't think you could read or anything, but but it's like, oh, that's awesome, you read like this thing that I pooped out of my brain. So it's really fun when I can like kind of get their like feedback, because a lot of times we're pulling from either experience or just relationships in our writing generally. So some people can kind of see behind the veil, like, wasn't that insert X here, insert friend here, and I'm like, what? No, what? But yeah, so that's always fun, because like you get a certain perspective like behind the veil that other readers like wouldn't have. So, but that's kind of a double-edged sword too, because my friends have told me that's taken them out of it to some degree, because it stops feeling like fiction at that point and starts feeling like a journal almost. So yeah, no, I mean, as far as support goes, definitely my wife is like a huge supporter, but not so much in like the reader way, but more in just like the supporting like my writing time and things like that way, and friends as well. Yeah, it's just people's support comes in many different ways. Like one of my friends just shooting up like a post on Reddit about, hey, read this book, things like that, where it's like, yeah, people generally want to help you when you're an artist, which is awesome.
Oh yeah, I love that. Now with people, let's say, like whether you know them or not, and I love that idea of someone hitting you up that you hadn't, I heard from in a while. That kind of bridges the gap of, like the personal and the reader, So if I can start with Charlie, do you derive support or critique, from my reviews, from my Goodreads, from my from social media, like is the reader, interacting with you, do you feel that interaction?
Oh, totally. Yeah, no. And for the most part, it's always a good experience, whether they enjoyed or didn't enjoy the work. The only time I've ever had an issue with feedback is when it's tied entirely to my ethnicity and nothing else. So like I've had like issues of like, I would never say this about like black people or what, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, that's whatever, but you're not like, for what, you're not engaging the work. You're just engaging like you're like some kind of self-defense at like, critique on the experience of being black in America, which by itself, if that's the only thing you're looking at, I just can't take that seriously. But, you know, other critiques that aren't necessarily positive from readers always help me, because it's always like either a learning thing or understanding how to balance what critique to apply to your writing versus what not, because some things just aren't going to be for everybody, and that's okay. And it's just, it helps me learn how to navigate like criticism and when not to apply it.
But no, I mean, that's really tough to take for someone to, you know, to put it into a context. You know, people expect a white male author to be someone who is a blank slate, and then they drop things, you know, on top of that for anybody outside if they don't understand, you know.
Right.
I totally understand that, and that's, you know, I love the Margaret Atwood book, Negotiations with the Dead, and this is pre-internet when she's writing it, but she's basically saying, don't read reviews. You know, like once it has left you, it's separate. So the person who wrote it is there. That's not you.
Yeah, no, and that's very true. Like, it's hard though sometimes, because like on one side it's like reviews outside of like them like directly contacting you is kind of that way that readers are trying to connect with the writer. So it's hard to not engage with them on a surface level, at least, just because it's like, oh, hey, like, I just want to say I appreciate you reading the book. But on the other hand, you know, we're artists, we're sensitive. So it's like, you know, a lot of times they say like publishers or whatever, just don't look at Goodreads, just stay away from it. And it's like, you know, you try to, but yeah, sometimes it pulls you in.
You try to, absolutely. Mark, can I ask you about, do you stay out of the comments, you know? Oh, yeah, I'm gonna have to just toss it back on. Looks like we got a mute.
There we go. Sorry. Strangely enough, my wife will get very defensive. Like, I'll go onto Goodreads once in a while to see Reinhardt's Garden, and generally it's all really good and favorable. And but once or twice, my wife will get very defensive. I can't believe they don't understand it. Why would they say that? That kind of thing. And I just shrug it off. I'm like, that's fine. You know, I know one person in all the reviews for Reinhardt's Garden. I was very lucky. There wasn't I don't want to say professional, but it wasn't a read. It was like a publication review. There wasn't a bad one. There was no bad reviews. I mean, that's not saying I wish there were more reviews. I wish there had been, but nothing was positive or negative. But on Goodreads, you know, a reader said something like, because the book is an unbroken paragraph, and said, oh, that's like a gimmick. And my wife's like, oh my God. I'm like, that's fine. That's just the style it is, and I don't take it personally. So it is hard to avoid that stuff. And I admire writers that can let go and release and walk away. And at some point, hopefully I'll get to that point. But right now I want to see what people think. And a lot of times they bring insights. They see things that you yourself did not see in your own work.
Yeah. Miranda, do you take comments, you know, personally, or do you see kind of like, you know, especially with poetry, I believe it, you can see a separation between yourself as a person and yourself as a writer?
I think this is going to speak a little to the like vanity of the writer, because like I do not separate the two. You know, like for me, I wouldn't be who I am without what I do. Not to like quote a shitty action film, but we were talking about the 90s. But so I'm not on that level where like people are critiquing my book, but I will say, like, as a founder of a publication, we often will get some very interesting, I'll leave it at that, responses from either submitters that have been rejected or just people in the community reaching out to us. And a lot of times these comments are very directed and can be quite personal, like especially when it comes to, like, we were dealing with a situation where a submitter was very upset that they were rejected, and they personally attacked our editor on like a social media platform. And as like the heads of the mag, like Chris and I kind of feel like it's our duty to that employee to step in and be like, hey, you know, you don't have to engage in this, right? It's unprofessional and it's cruel. And that's normally the road we take when it comes to negative response from the community, is just to be like, quiet, dignity, and grace, you know, just let it roll. Chris has a fun saying about how, you know, we wouldn't know we were successful if people weren't hating on us. And I do kind of like that mantra. As he giggles in the background, I've tried to adopt in my personal critiques as well, because most of the people that are critiquing my work are people in my writing circle. You know, I don't have a good platform, I guess, for people to hit me back about my work. I guess they could send me an email about my YouTube videos or like my little publications. They could message me, but yeah, I guess the joy of being an emerging writer is that I don't have too many people giving me a hard time about what I'm saying just yet. I'll get there, I'm sure.
Oh, I love that, and especially as a bridge, because it feels to me like the best place to get a situation where you're comfortable enough that you don't need support and you can take criticism, you know, like real hard-hitting, I didn't like this, no offense, but you respect the other person's, you know, opinion, is in those small critique groups, in those small either critique partners or anything like that, you know. Mark, do you reach out for these kind of relationships, you know, often, or?
I don't really reach out. I mean, I'm in kind of a lucky spot in that I work at the bookstore, so I've made some great friendships with actually Chris, but Daniel Pena, another writer and a teacher, and Rodrigo Hasbun, who's a writer from Bolivia, from working at the bookstore. So what you need to do, I think, is surround yourself like with a writing group of writers and friends that you trust. They're looking out for your best interests. They want you to succeed. They want your work to be the best that it can be, and that you share the same kind of sensibility and taste. So a lot of these people, like the reviews that weren't as good to Reinhardt's Garden, I kind of shrugged because, well, they don't like the things that I like. So if you know, I love Thomas Bernhard and I kind of try to imitate him a bit in that book. And if they don't like my book, but they don't like Thomas Bernhard, well, yeah, well, you're not going to like the thing that I like. So it's not meant to be taken personally. But back to your question, I think you want to surround yourself with not replicas of your thinking, but like-minded people that are interested in the things that you write about, maybe similar genres, similar styles, because then you can have a dialogue and really support each other, you know? So I think surrounding yourself with good friends and writers that you can trust. And I've been pretty lucky, you know. I think working at the bookstores where a lot of those friendships first started.
Heck yeah. Now, most of us in the virtual room right here are from Houston, but can I ask Charlie, you know, how is the situation in Columbus, which I would say is probably a similarly sized writers community? You probably have more institutional universities and stuff like that support up there in Ohio than we have down here in Houston. But we're beating you on population, but maybe not in educated population, let's say. Readership.
I mean, we have, like, you know, OSU, so it's like a huge school. But most of my like writing community has come from, I used to host a writers group here in Columbus, and I don't anymore. It's just somebody else is handling it. It's, you know, taking the lead on it now. But I generally find like writing groups just on like sites like Meetup or things like that are going on. Not anything against, like, you know, academia or anything, but it's just the type of writers that I tend to like mesh with most generally don't come from that community. We have a very like tight-knit and awesome poetry scene out here. Unfortunately, I'm fiction, so it's like I admire all the work that I see and get to listen to, but it's just like for that community, I'm more of a fan than an actual like member. But yeah, so a lot of my writing partnerships and friendships come from like online, or like usually I'll meet people at AWP, such as yourself, and then kind of form a relationship that way. Also, I'll do like a workshop like this summer. I was lucky enough to join Vona, which phenomenal, like amazing, changed my, but that was really important because I linked up with a number of different writers of color, and that was really important because sometimes, like, you know, you need that with certain perspective and certain work that you're doing more than others. So I would say that this, especially with our current situation, like community isn't so much going to be found next door, but using all of these new avenues that we've been kind of forced to learn how to use real fast is as beneficial to the writer as it is to anyone else.
Heck yeah. And quick hat tip to the FIA, my online, my BIPOC, my science fiction conference coming up in October as well.
Yeah.
I signed up for, and really I'm gonna sit back there and I'm gonna listen, because it's a perspective that, yes, is there, and I'm really interested in it, but it's like, just let everybody talk, let everybody go. It's an interesting microcosm. I love it.
Definitely.
Thank you. Heck yeah. No. Now Miranda, as far as writing community goes, you have kind of built your own large bolus. What was that game? Katamari Damacy. You have Damacy, the city of Houston.
Sir, it's Katamari Damacy.
Oh my, 2 points, Charlie. Oh my, for sure. Do you see kind of a writing community coming about, in your situation, which I consider an absolute success, is being something more of it's like social or writerly, kind of first, what's more important, or what's the intro to meeting someone new, let's say?
Okay. I met yourself and Chris at a writing conference. But it was a writing conference. It was my first conference ever, I think, is where I met you guys both. And it was at UH, and I worked for their Lit Mag. So I came to the start of my community at university. Now I did obsessively attend literary events in the community, and I am an extroverted kind of loudmouth person. So I'm that girl that will interrupt your conversation and be like, I really loved your reading. Oh my God, it was so amazing. Can I come see more somewhere else? And I find that people really respond well to you enjoying their work. And as far as developing like a mentorship kind of community, I'm just not afraid to ask people like for help or for their opinion or their thoughts. And I find that there's a lot of mentors out there, that, for example, I would say my number one writing mentor is Giuseppe Torino, and I took one class with him. It's not like I bombarded my schedule with his, but I did attend Poison Pen all the time, I will admit. I loved to go to Poison Pen because it was like the whole Houston vibe would show up to this same event, and it was low maintenance, right? Because it was only once a month. And it's at a great local bar. Now, the virtual community, though, is super cool because the reach is so much broader now, right? For example, we had this super cool poet at one of the last defunct events who's in Morocco. It was 2:00 in the morning there, but the capacity for us to have those individuals. We had Jason Koo, who's in New York, read at an event. As much as it is kind of sad that we can't have these in-person events right now in Houston, because that is where a lot of my writing circle came from, it's still really cool that those relationships are strong enough to now where we can bring it to the virtual platform, right? I also think small conversations that started like my friendship with Chris started really casual. We sat down at lunch together at this writing conference. And I think we were exchanging the first time we were arrested stories. So it did not come from a writerly place at all. So yeah, I will have to admit that there is a huge social element for me. And I will say that has fed into some of my personal depression issues. These were the places that I went to socialize and be around like-minded people. Which it's actually helped my poetry, I guess, because I've been mired in my head a lot more. But it does not help my fiction. Maybe there's something there about that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that for sure. You mentioned it for a moment, and I'd love that you have someone you can identify as that in your writing, kind of career. Mark, do you see that you have kind of a mentor or an editor. I remember when I was writing for Art Forum, and I'd written a bunch of art articles for a bunch of different places, and it was great, but I would argue with them about putting words in or where things goes.
Yeah.
And then I'm writing for Art Forum, and my editor tears an article apart and puts it all back together. And I say, please, sir, can I have another? Because it was just beautiful how terrible and heart-wrenching it was.
Yeah. You know, I for years I was looking for a mentor. I had a good friend. I still do have a good friend where I grew up in Florida, probably about 6 or 7 years older than me. And he's a poet and a professor. And he was kind of a mentor. He introduced me to a lot of writers that I ended up loving. But in the last, I've been in Houston for about 8 years. I haven't really had any kind of mentor relationship. My editor at Coffee House is great. And when I got my edits back for the book, it was all drenched in red. I'm like, oh my God, they hate it. I got to change everything. And it was just all grammatical. I mean, the book is exactly what I wrote. So it was great. So I don't really have like a regular mentor relationship now, but I miss it. I think it's important to find someone that can kind of nurture you or see the promise in what you're doing and maybe say, well, look at it from this angle or look from this approach. I think it's really important to find that. And, you know, luckily I've got Danielle Bukowski now and people at Coffee House who I guess kind of understand my vision of what I'm going for and just kind of pat me on the back and support the direction I go. But the mentorship is huge.
No, absolutely. And Mark coming from a background, you know, with a publisher, with kind of structure, you know, Charlie, if I can ask for your experience, because kind of the same question, but the context you're coming from with being a self-published author, really doing everything yourself from marketing to, you know, formatting a book to deciding on a cover and all that. Do you feel that you've been able to find a mentor or a relationship?
Well, sorry, I actually haven't done self-publishing before, but like the press kind of handled everything with like all that cool, like all that stuff, which is beyond important, the work that they do. Like my editor was very awesome about just like keeping me in line, and especially when I would get into like the issues of super anxiety with the deadline looming over. So yeah, like Lanternfish is definitely an amazing group to work with. As far as like mentorship goes, I've had a few like that have either taught me directly or indirectly through just their work. My main mentor though would be Dr. Burns. She's a professor at Otterbein of African American literature, and like this was like years ago, and I went there. She oversaw like my senior project, which became my novel, and we developed a friendship. And like I still like call her like sensei, like whenever I see her, because I always go to her for like either support or to commiserate or to just discuss like themes and actions and like, you know, literature. So she's definitely been probably my number one support for writing.
Thank you. And I apologize.
Oh, no worries. No.
But seeing the indie, you know, sticker on like that,
gotcha. Yeah.
I did get confused because I do hear self-published referred to as indie. But it just meant small publisher. And
small press. Yeah, they do that interchangeably. Like, you know, some people use independent as, you know, independent press or independently published, but yeah.
Yeah. Same with Coffee House. It's a small independent nonprofit press. So yeah.
Thank you. Miranda, have you set up your nonprofit status yet?
They told us we'd have to have a board of directors, and Chris and I decided we didn't want bosses over us just yet.
It's okay. And this is from Art. The deal is, if you need a board of directors, you just pack the court. So you just be like, hey, mom, will you be on a board? You know, like just ask anybody. And so this goes for any of y'all out there who are like, I want to put together a nonprofit. You just make people who, you know, put people on the board who are not going to make decisions.
A bunch of yes men.
Yes.
Right.
I hate to break in here, but Sean, I think you just volunteered to make Houston Independent Authors a nonprofit.
Oh yes, absolutely. Come on, I was telling you that, Shannon. We're gonna do that, absolutely. All my quick question, short round. Miranda, what social media, of all the different platforms out there, do you feel akin with? What's your strategy for hopping on there and making noise?
I am an Instagram person, but that's just because it's the laziest platform because you can post to all three from one spot. And honestly, Sean, if not for my good friend Tamara on this call and a couple of run-ins with like publishing agents at conferences, I wouldn't be on social media. But when somebody let me know, like, oh, if you want a book deal, you're going to need to be present on social media, I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it. But I do use the shit out of my Goodreads to keep my like list of books that need to be read, which is infinite and never ending, apprised.
Heck yeah, I just started one on Goodreads, so I'll totally have to hit you up about that. Mark, what do you say? What's your pick your poison?
My poison, and it is poison, is Twitter. I'm on Instagram and Twitter. It's like the mean people in high school. It can be nasty and bully, but that's where you find those people. I found my people, or they found me, where you love the maybe sub genre of books or writers, and you can take a picture or send a link to an Austrian novel from 1905, and someone's like, oh my God, that's my favorite. So that is how I've built a lot of the relationships at the bookstore, but also as a writer on Twitter. And it can be kind of loud and noisy. It can be an echo chamber. So there are times when it's good to just step away. But that's probably my poison of choice. And that's really where Chris Fishbach, the publisher of Coffee House, kind of reached out to me after I'd sent him the manuscript. So a lot of it kind of behind the scenes and instant messages, or direct messages happened on Twitter. Email, but also Twitter a little bit to a lesser degree. But also, I know writers who refuse and any social media. So I don't think, Miranda, that you have to be on it. Don't give you, if you don't want to be on it or it's not healthy, get off it. You're still a writer and a poet, and you're going to do what you're going to do. And so I am conflicted because to write the work or create the work, you don't need the social media. You don't need it, but unfortunately it does help.
Heck yeah. Charlie, same question. Do you like the tweets, or are you preferential to the what's a disparaging word for Facebook?
Cambridge Analytical. Oh, but no, I was a huge Facebook guy. Heck, up until like 2 weeks ago or so. I was on all of them. Like Instagram was one of my favorites, mostly because it's easy, as Miranda was saying, like just to throw a photo up and also share everything easily to like your author page on Facebook and make it a tweet as well. And also you can play around with like writing for photography. So that's always been kind of a fun thing, but I've kind of left both Instagram and Facebook recently, more so just out of recent developments with the Kenosha thing and everything. I just decided to hop off. But Twitter has now become my primary and really only source. Like they all have their issues, so it's just like pick your poison. But with Twitter, I gotta say it helps you write in some ways because like you have these truncated things that you can say, and when you write satire, like you're trying to be funny and brevity, wit, all that. So it definitely helps in that regard. And it's really been interesting to see how much it's improved my writing time, because I don't spread myself so thin as I used to on like, oh, let me post this here, what that person say, so it's nice to have one single line of social crack. So yeah.
No, I'm a big Twitter head as well, and I love that it's not everybody, but I got a consensus out of that, so I definitely appreciate that. But Miranda mentioned it for a second, and let me go back to this because I find of the three big ones, y'all have all mentioned it. It's kind of, take what you can get, but as far as social media where it's kind of you give and you get, Goodreads is one where you can post reviews. If your book is up on there, you're being reviewed. Or if you're an author on there, people can look you up and see what you're reading as long as it's set to public, stuff like that. But there's that. There's a Reddit, which I love to use on the r/writers, r/pub query, where people just tear each other's queried letters apart. Do y'all use any of those kind of social media where it's kind of give and gets, I'll go back to Miranda on that. Do you like that more interaction kind of social media?
I love Goodreads. One, for the pragmatic side of it, the fact that I can have a list of books that I still want to purchase, especially when it comes, and I love when my friends use Goodreads, because then when it comes time to, the holidays or a birthday, I have a ready list of books that they need to add to their library. It actually did backfire on me one time though, because my friend was not updating his, and I bought him a book that he'd already had. So, and it is really cool to be able to go look at like the authors that I follow, like what they're reading, what's influencing the work that they're coming up with. Also, sometimes it makes suggestions, like if you like this, you might like this too. And sometimes that can be a fun rabbit hole to run down. As far as the other ones, Reddit, I'm not familiar with, so I can't comment on that. I know my husband uses Reddit sometimes, but it seems like mostly he's just talking shit. So there's that. I guess you could, if that's what you're into, you could go there. LinkedIn, I use that straight for like super professional work, like WITS, or if I was like gonna go look for like a publishing house that was hiring or something like that, I would go to LinkedIn.
LinkedIn and YouTube, and specifically, kind of the booktube things that are out there, I was also thinking of as well. Yeah.
YouTube, I definitely like use a lot of, because it captures performance, and of course we use it a ton with the magazine, because we have our own YouTube channel, so any event that we hold virtually, that's another thing about this virtual reality that we're traipsing through now, is that everything that we do, I don't have to hire a videographer to come film the event. It's all on Zoom, and I can just send that recording over to our videographer to clean up. And it's made our YouTube, granted, he's now stacked because we've had so many. But I find YouTube and Goodreads to be like my most commonly used.
Heck yeah. Mark, do you hop on Reddit and talk shit, or use LinkedIn in a writerly way at all?
Never for both. I've never been on. I don't even know, is Reddit it's a website? I'm like, I've heard of it, but
old school message boards, and they can go on forever and ever. But nearly anonymous.
Gotcha.
So the point kind of is, as far as the writing communities, there's sci-fi writers. There's like I was talking about space earlier. There's one like r/space.
Yeah.
And you just follow different topics, r/Animal Crossing. And you see all the strange things and unfiltered anonymous things that are out.
Yeah, that just sounds like another another black hole I would go in and go, I'll do this before I write. So, but I know you started this question with interacting with readers and other writers and stuff. So I primarily, it's just Twitter or a little bit Instagram. I use that for like photos, mostly my cats or pictures of book covers. But if someone ever wants to talk to me, I'm easy to track down. But yeah, Reddit and LinkedIn, I think I used once as in a professional, setting to look for work or something years ago. But no, pretty much I'm limited to just kind of Twitter and Instagram.
Okay. Yeah. I once used Reddit to write a 2,000, 3,000 word, what was it? The microbiome of the sandworms from Dune. So
oh my gosh.
You just dive right in there.
Right, yeah.
But Charlie, interactive give and get kind of social media, anything your jam?
Well, yeah, no, I definitely love Goodreads. A lot of what they've been saying is totally the same reasons, because I've actually gotten book recommendations when I'm looking for very specific things for research, because there's like a function where you can ask for book recs, and also just finding things I never would have heard about otherwise because of like the scrolling timeline with like this person's reading this person's reading that I just like can click, oh, add it to my thing and then throw it on. So Goodreads is good for, finding reads, but yeah, no, YouTube I like to use for just posting stuff related to like readings and stuff like that. Like personally, I use YouTube all the time because ADHD. It's like I love the quick succession of watching videos. But yeah, so I'm definitely into both of those. Reddit, my wife knows a lot more about Reddit than I do. I'm not nearly as savvy with it just because it's just so much happening all at once. I just like, go into the fetal position when I look at it. But yeah, no, so I'm unfortunately not too much into that one.
No, cool. I appreciate that. And I feel like this social media, now we're talking on a Zoom call and stuff like that, this technology is getting into what the definition of kind of a writing community is, I was mentioning the Reddit thing and I don't want to harp on it, but it's very interesting when people go on long diatribes and tell things about, themselves in what they're saying. And then like Charlie Strauss or John Scalzi, just like kind of famous sci-fi authors will hop on the thread and directly respond to someone's utter shit post. So there's a little very direct action in that for sure. Do you guys have a story, and this might be the social media or not, do you have a story about a critic, a review, a social media post that affected you, or that you actively, like disregarded, like just, I'm pushing this out of my memory? Miranda?
I had one this week.
Oh,
And it was rather intense because this was an individual like that I knew kind of acquaintance wise, like we had some classes together back at university. But other than that, I hadn't really seen this person or had any other interaction with them. And then I made a comment like, okay, I'm gonna date myself a little bit. I didn't know that the term dude was controversial. And
Okay.
it is.
Yeah.
It is now. So I'm educating. And I had an individual who, because I said I always use the term dude in like a gender neutral way. Like I call everyone dude. And I guess I should not be doing this. Or I was informed that I should not be doing this because it invalidates people's experience as non-binary. And I had just never considered that. And it was like an educational moment for me, but it was also like upsetting because I really thought, because, my whole career intention is to uplift and provide platform for marginalized individuals. And that I made someone in this community feel this way by just like flippantly commenting on a friend's post on social media, like the weight and the responsibility of kind of being a publisher. And like she called me out, she was or they called me out and informed me that this was not okay and that it hurt their feelings. And even though they respected that that was not my intention, and it ended up being a very productive conversation, but yeah, it definitely affected me. It shook me up a whole lot, and it made me second guess some of the things that I've said and do in these environments, because now I'm under a microscope that I didn't realize I was really under before. So it was a little jarring and a little unsettling, but it was an opportunity to learn something.
We're all going to get a little more Southern because, I mean, I grew up in New York and it was you guys all the time for everything, no matter if it is a bunch, it doesn't matter who it is, but it's about the receiving end as well as the outward. So we're all going to be a little more Southern, and y'all can replace all those regional things that people say, dude, just being, it's a California, way to say it. But Mark, can I ask you the same question? Social media posts that affected you, or yeah?
You know what? I've been, I guess, lucky, knock on wood. I've not gotten, well, I mean.
Or a critique, a review or anything, yeah.
I think just the one or two on Goodreads where someone was kind of like really hypercritical of the book, but you almost wanted to reach out to them. I'm not logged in, so I can just, go and say, hey, what are people saying about my book? But someone said, and I guess I only took it a little bit personally because it was, I wanted to say, no, you're not seeing what I'm seeing. Is that I think they said, because the book is a comedy and it's about melancholy. And this person said, oh, if, this might have interested me when I was like in high school and morbid and everything and whatever, morose. But the thing is that the book is kind of poking fun at that thing. It's not that I'm that thing or they're that thing. So I think they missed the satiric aspect. I'm pretty lucky. So I haven't really had any kind of back and forth. A couple things on Twitter, but nothing major, nothing about my work or my books or anything. So I've been pretty unscathed, luckily. So yeah.
Heck yeah. And I don't mean it just in a negative way,
Oh yeah, no. I mean, in a positive sense, just the relationships I've made off of like Twitter with people in publishing and agents and writers that live in Australia or Europe, and these friendships you end up making, and then you realize that you were mistaken all those years for putting these people on pedestals because the books are magic, and you think of the people that are doing it, they're superhuman, and it's like they're just people too. So making these relationships has been really fulfilling. Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Oh my, Charlie, do you? Did you find any, positive or negative, social media post or review that really affected you,
Oh, totally. Like I've had like people reach out to me directly and just tell me like that it's awesome to have this type of story from like a perspective that's not usually engaged, and that kind of just like it means everything because it's like, oh wow, like I'm communicating, I'm able to, like, people are resonating, and that's like one of the reasons like we do this is to like just tell a story, and stories are kind of what connect us. So those are always really important to me. Also, I would say like one that really affected me right in my nerd core was when my best friends came up to me. He was like, because I throw nerd references in all the time, and he told me that I accidentally got the Konami code wrong, and that just broke my heart. I was just like, I can never recover from this. It's in print. There's nothing coming back, because I mixed up the select start, I think, in the order that they go in, and it's like my greatest failure, and I will never recover.
Oh, that's too detailed, but yeah, totally possible. Well, thank you guys very much. And if you have a little bit of time, I have some questions in the group chat, and anybody who's on here, feel free to toss some questions in there for sure. But let's see here. Going back to the beginning, what do you do when your friend groups and family are afraid they won't understand your work? Is it engage with them, or is it, disengage? Yeah. I don't know. I don't know who to ask. Yes, Charlie?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, you kind of just have to still write it only because like there's always going to be somebody that's not going to, unfortunately, not to minimize how hard it is when it's your family or people close to you. As long as you're like honestly trying to tell a story that isn't in a way trying to like lessen their identity, I suppose, is the best way to put it. Like they unfortunately just have to write it and hope for the best, but that's as much as I would say on that.
Yeah. I think Miranda was going to say something, and then I'll go to her.
Please, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Either way.
Oh, okay. You can go. I'll go next. Yeah, go right ahead.
I'm gonna quote someone that I had class with. I was told by a creative writing professor that at some point you're gonna offend somebody. So I guess it's kind of an age-old adage, like you can't please everyone. So just please yourself. What is that?
Yeah.
Garden Party. I'm quoting Garden Party by Ricky Nelson. Wow, dating myself again. But it's a very good mantra. I think like if you have a story or a poem or something that is pressing against you that needs to be said, I think you have every right as an artist to say it. And the audience that it's right for, it hopefully will find them.
Yeah.
And if it's not right for everyone, that's fine too. I mean, you can't write to please everybody, right? Because then it just becomes generic and cliched and boring. And yeah, well, you might have a fatter bank account, but are you then really like being true to your form and being true to yourself? And that's what I have to say about that.
Yeah. No, I was going to just agree with Miranda. And also, I think it's one of those times when I don't want to use the word selfish, but I will. But when you're writing or creating or doing all that, it is the time to be absolutely selfish, because if you're true to you, then the work is going to be better. If you're looking at, it's like when they get these think tanks in Hollywood to say, okay, let's scan the audience and test them, these test markets, and see all that, and algorithms and all. And that just takes all the beauty out of it. It takes the art out of it. Your work, if it's true, you're being true to yourself, will find its audience. And if it's not meant for your family to kind of get it, or your close friends, then that's a hard thing to do. But you have to kind of move on, as long as it's right for you. If it's the work that you feel is the truest to you. That's just one of those things that I think you have to be absolutely authentic about, and not worry about the audience, because the audience comes in later. You want to worry about the work, I think, when you're doing it.
Okay. I looking on here, I don't see too many things with question marks at the end. Does anyone want to ask a question for sure? Please,
So
Julie.
I do have a question, since some of you guys on the panel are, you knew I was going to come in. Since some of you guys have dual roles, not just as writers, but also either as publishers, Miranda with your magazine, and then Mark, you with the bookstore. Can you give us any instances, because I'm a wonderful devil's advocate, where you've seen people do the absolute worst thing with either, communicating with you guys on a professional level or with their audience?
Oh yeah, all the time. Bookstore wise. Oh yeah. I mean, I obviously won't name names, but I'm just trying to think of examples. One thing that happens at the bookstore is that you'll get a big time author's publicist who contacts the bookstore. You organize the event, and we all are like, oh, this author is going to be a nightmare, because they want only the blue M&Ms. They want this, they need that, they want the sparkling water, and you get all these demands, and then the author comes, and they're the nicest person on earth. And you realize that, I guess, the publicist is just trying to protect them but it's really odd, because there's this disconnect, and you meet the author and they're gracious and sweet and down to earth. And we're like, oh, okay, we don't say it, but we thought you were going to be a nightmare. So there's definitely instances like that in the book world,
Julie, did you have a question?
Oh,
Well, I'd like to see what Miranda said, because again, she's getting, I know she said earlier, like with the people who don't get their submissions accepted by her magazine and them kind of acting out. I'd like, if you don't mind, I'd like to hear, what is the wrong way to handle the situation? Rough. And then even Charlie, with you setting up those different groups inside of Ohio, like, have you ever had anybody that just totally burnt a bridge? And can you teach anybody who's on the call, like, how not to do that?
I will say, like, most of those experiences, they're few and far between from us, but I say the more broader reach that the magazine to have, the more of these we're getting, which is cool, because we're reaching more people. But at the same time, there's like this level of professionalism that, as like a submitting artist myself, that I expect, and things like that I would never ever do. For example, responding to a rejection letter saying, well, you're a bunch of bleeping chumps and F you and all these other things. Like, be kind to the people reading your work, because guess what? They're going to talk to other people that read your work. Sadly, it is a game of networking to some extent. And if you're just like, if I hear about someone being especially cruel to like a friend of mine on Gulf Coast, or if someone was a super dick to Mark over at Brazos, I'd be like, you know what, I probably don't want to work with this person, because anybody that we publish is also a slight representation of us as an organization, right? And there's lots of really nice artists out there that are looking for the same opportunity. So basically, be kind to others and keep it professional.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. Honestly, I don't really have too much to contribute on this one, only because, like, generally the groups that I work with or have been in, we don't have so many, like, issues of headbutting. And if there is, like, usually it's from, like, somebody who's just coming for the first time, and it's less an issue if they're writing, but more everything. So they usually don't come back. So I've been, unfortunately, like, lucky in that regard. But yeah.
I have another question coming from Julie, and instead of audio, she was nice enough to post it over in the chat. There's a link if you guys are unfamiliar with what I'm talking about that I just posted to an article about this, but it's probably more of a refresher because this was about a month ago, and most writing community people will have heard of it. Dueling Zooms, totally a new problem to have in 2020, Julie, absolutely. Do any of y'all have any thoughts about the letter in regards to free expression recently signed by many authors and others? And there's a link in the chat to an article about that, but J.K. Rowling, Noam Chomsky, and warning about stifled speech was kind of the gist of it. Mark, you're unmuted, so I'm gonna go to you first if you have an opinion.
Can I just add before y'all start that this group, Houston Independent Authors, has been very good for me because frequently they talk about issues in the writing community that maybe we are not aware of, and we get a chance to discuss them. So Sean has brought up, I don't know, various issues. I can't remember now, but various times we've talked about issues out there in the broader publishing world. And I would be interested in hearing your opinions.
Thank you, Julie. I'm familiar with that article. I think I read it. I remember when it was a big deal a couple weeks ago. I forget the gist of it, but I remember a lot of people kind of stepping away and being like, I read it. I did not sign it. Authors saying that. So I kind of forget the details. So I don't have a lot to contribute to that one, unfortunately.
Sean might want to summarize it, but what I took away is all this cancel culture because someone makes a mistake, uses the wrong pronoun or whatever, and then, you know, the social media just goes viral on them.
Yeah.
Even though the totality of their work might not be reflected by this one supposed misstep, whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I took from the letter.
Let me preface what anyone's answer in this situation is going to be. Just this is a meta to the conversation by saying anyone who is not in a position of power, like those people that sign the letters, or let's say, you know, people who are allowed to give their full-throated opinion and stick to it and still have people who like them, are going to be very hesitant to take a position for or against either well-meaning censorship, cancel culture, or what else can I say? Right-wing, left-wing thought, because you can get canceled. And so the idea of this letter right here is, it is something that it is answerable to those people who signed it or those people who actively, purposely did not sign it. But as someone who is going to record something and put it on the internet, there might not be as much of an opinion as you might like, Julie.
Meaning it's a very, very sticky situation. Yeah. I'll just say this about the whole cancel thing is that, I mean, no one needs to have their work or their lives or whatever they're doing canceled if it's an honest mistake. And you can generally tell people's intentions. And if someone kind of owns up and says, oh, I misspoke or I didn't mean that, and then you move on. I mean, life is a growing experience and we all make mistakes. And then if someone says, well, yeah, I think the Nazis were great, then obviously, that's not good. That's the opposite of good. So there is that fine line where you have to kind of look at intention. And it does seem like it's definitely a time where a lot of people are getting kind of canceled, and I don't know, sometimes deservedly so, I guess, but I'm in no position to really know. But if someone is coming from a good place, you generally can tell, and they show, maybe a little bit of, they're apologetic or whatever, then yeah. So.
I was going to echo what Mark was saying. I mean, the situation that I was telling you guys about before was essentially that's what was happening. Someone was attempting to cancel me because I'm hosting right now at a feminine and non-binary workshop here in the city of Houston. As far as I know, Defunct is the only magazine that has done that. But as Mark was saying, like, this individual was not concerned with my intention. Even when I explained my intention and apologized and removed the post, they still felt the need to continue the conversation. And I don't want to invalidate anyone's position. And there is a fine line between censorship and what's the other one? Censorship and, just allowing, because like as a publisher, I'm not going to put anything that does harm to others out. You know what I mean? I don't condone it, and I wouldn't, ever put something that is going to be harmful to any community out into the public. But I do like to feature really edgy topics, that for some people, some individuals out there, that is crossing the line. So it's kind of like critical feedback on your writing. You have to take some of it with a grain of salt, and then let it, take that shot, and whether it makes you puke or not, okay. But other times, like, you can feel validated, I think, in saying, you know what, this wasn't my intention. You can apologize for the pain that it caused somebody, but at the same time, like, be true to yourself. And if you know, like, that your intention was positive, like, don't let somebody cancel you, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Charlie, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, so I don't know. I think I'm a bit on a different side, just because ultimately I don't really think that cancel culture has the impact that we think it does. Like, for instance, Lindy West has an awesome essay on just the idea of like canceled or people like talking about censorship and how it's a issue with comedy, and how ultimately, like, there's an idea of I can't say bad thing about bad group or bad thing about these people and get praise for it ultimately. Like, I feel that the idea of cancel culture is almost overly sensitive in a way that you are kind of negating the ability of people to express their frustrations about how their identity or their, like, personhood is being interpreted by your work. And when it comes to, like, the idea of canceling, no one has been summarily, like, dismissed in these circles that discuss I've been canceled. Like, Louis C.K. is still doing shows and getting loud applause. Like, you have people that are still getting, like, deals, money, etc. So what is the idea of cancel? Is it ultimately negative feedback? Is it monetary loss? Because if you're talking monetary loss, then unfortunately, if you're in a capitalistic society, people vote with their dollar and they don't want to spend on your work. They've made their choice. So I don't necessarily think cancel culture in itself exists to the degree people believe it does in its impact, if that makes sense. But yeah.
Can I respond? Or I have a question for you, Charlie. Do you think that perhaps individuals of that level of clout are a little bit more shielded from that?
Oh, entirely. Yeah. No, I would agree there. Yeah. And the only thing, though, is that there's kind of also an upside if you're not on a higher level, because your reach isn't as far, so you have more chance and more opportunity to engage a different audience. So I still feel that, like, even if you're not of, like, you know, the J.K. Rowling status, when you're quote unquote canceled, it may affect you, but unfortunately it's just a part of, just as you have free speech to say whatever you want, not you, of course, I'm saying just in general the you. Is there a royal you? I don't know how that works, but just the idea of you know, what is canceled? Like, are you being, like, completely destroyed? Like, you're not, you're just being kind of, you know, your work is not being accepted by this group, and you may need to work on it a bit, or you may just need to you know, change your game. But yeah.
Let me bounce back, and this is still the meta conversation of it, but one thing I know that Julie is referring to is right at the beginning of the year, there were some lovely, delicious controversies. So we sipped tea all January over the breakdown of the Romance Writers Association of America, which literally is a soap opera in itself. Delicious. About the release of oh gosh, I'm gonna forget about it. It had the blue and white cover with the
American Dirt? No.
barbed wire on it.
Yeah,
American Dirt.
Yeah, American
Yes,
Dirt.
American Dirt controversy, and Own Voices stories, which is a great example of someone who created controversy, was, let's say, into cancel culture, you know, canceling was coming at her, and ended up having one of the most successful books of at least the first half of the year. So although, you know, like, there's part of it where it's, yes, something was you know, cancel culture was involved, it didn't cancel her whatsoever. But I want to get to this third one, which was the best, which is a short story published in Clark's World called I Sexually Identify as an Attack Helicopter. And it has been scrubbed from the internet. It is an amazing story. And it was written by a trans author writing anonymously using a pseudonym, accused by the left of being a very right-wing story, accused by the right of being a very left-wing story. And the entire thing collapsed on itself when people found out who the author was and started doxing her for paradoxical reasons.
Wow.
Sorry, I just got a headache, Sean.
This is a weird 2020, but yeah, we were already fucked before the oh, am I losing internet? I'm sorry if I am, if my audio is messed up. My apologies.
You're back.
You're back.
Good, okay. Well, cool. We are.
You're gone again.
No, just about a quarter after 2. I'm going to hand it over to Shannon. Do you want to talk about next week real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to thank our panelists. And then if you guys, I know we're running kind of low on time, but I also want to know, since you guys are kind of developed farther in your career than some of the other people who are watching, were there any misconceptions you had about audiences or interacting with readers that you thought of when you were a baby writer, that you faced the reality and were like, wow, this was way different than I expected? And if so, can you give a couple of tidbits on that so that our audience can learn from them? Why don't we start with Charlie?
Oh, I would say, like, as far as, like, just, you have that fantasy of, like, you know, being the author with, like, you know, a bunch of different people, like, lined up at your table, et cetera, and then, like, you go and do these events and these readings at bookstores, and you begin to realize how much work has to go into building a readership and building a community of people that want to crack into your work. So I guess I just didn't, going into it, it's less so much the readership, but the hustle you have to make to find that readership, to engage that readership, that was surprising. Because the readers themselves, once you have them, they're generally amazing, but it's just getting them in. Unfortunately, in this, we have like so many avenues for people to get work out there and like market their work and things like that. And unfortunately, like, it's not as easy to do that for some as it is for others. So it's just the work you have to put in was I was happy to do it, but it definitely is a lot more than, I expected before I got published.
Exactly what Charlie said, that you really do. There is a hustle. There really is. And that there's so much, not just noise, but there's so much competition for people's attention, that to break out and actually get the attention that you want your work to get, it really does take a lot of work. So even though I love Coffee House Press and it was a dream to be published from them, and they're going to do my next book and it's a dream, that's still a microcosm of a microcosm. I mean, it's a very, very kind of small literary press that is appealing to certain people, like a bubble, really. So I went on a little book tour, and to drum up excitement and noise, as Charlie said, I go to read in here at home and there's like 120 people. And then I go to New York and there's like 4 people yawning, reading the paper, like, oh, hi guys. So it really is hard to get people excited and to find and get readers. And also, to Charlie's point, and then I'll stop, I think once you get those readers and they like your work, they stick around, and readers are great. But it is hard to get people's attention. There is a hustle to it, so.
I'm in the hustle. Yeah. So I think my process for trying to get my work out there, since you guys are speaking from further along this life game that you're on, I am constantly looking for places where I can talk about work, where I can be invested in different parts of the writers community. Daniel Pena gave me some really good advice one time, which was, you should not be satisfied unless you've obtained 100 rejections this year. Yeah. And that's not talking about publication, that's talking about rejection. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing that a lot of my friends and my colleagues they're excellent writers, amazing writers, but they're terrified to submit. And it's fear of rejection. And we can all empathize with that, right? Like, we don't want someone to take something that we've spent the last year working on and go, well, this is shit. Who would want to read this? Nobody wants that feedback. And it's hard to get to that point where you're just like, they're just not my reader. They're just not my reader, but there is somebody else out there. And for all the people that might not be your reader, I'm that person that is like, if there's one person out there that wants to buy this book or read this poem or watch this YouTube video, okay, cool. I made somebody else feel something for just a minute. Right. And so I think that's the big push. And there are dark days, like, where I'm just like, what the fuck am I doing? Am I a writer? Like, do I get to, and this is in the same conversation in which I told you that it's a major part of my identity. Right. So yeah, I think that comes with working in the arts, right? Though, John, or running your own business. It's like, there are days where you're like, I can't do this today. And you got to give yourself those self-care moments, right?
Unfortunately, with the business thing, you don't get those days at all. You get the fear in the back of your head that everything's going to fall apart if you take even one day off. And that is why I lose my. That's why I
empathize with that.
But I understand for sure having self-empathy. Absolutely. And in creative things, for sure, that's definitely how it goes. But yeah, I'm not going to take the metaphor.
I will say, as a small business owner myself, like, you don't get those days off, especially because you have other people counting on you, right? And if you can keep that mentality that we're saying we have for small business running and take it to your writing, like, there's somebody else out there that needs you to write what you're writing.
Yep.
So do it. Excellent. If you're not willing to do it for yourself today, do it for them.
Wise words to take home. I want to thank Mark and Miranda for coming back, and then Charlie for joining us on his very first writer's lunch. Next week, we are going to have editor Amy, who is going to talk to us about what it's like to work with an editor, things you should know, things that are myths, clear up those misconceptions. She is the co-coordinator of the Editorial Freelancers Association, and she has got a master's degree in publishing. She is amazing, so we will see her next week. But for now, I want to thank everybody who's on our panel, and then ask the people who are in our audience to go ahead and send some virtual rounds of applauses their direction for giving us so much insight and being so wonderful today.
Thank you guys.
Thanks for having
Thanks for
us.
having
It was
us.
awesome.
Thank you. Take care.
Yeah, we wish you guys all good luck. We hope that y'all have a great week. You stay safe, wear your masks, stay away from everybody, love from at least 6 feet away.